Good morning, everybody. My name is Rashad Pasic. Everybody calls me Paya. And I'm professor of obstetrics gynecology at the University of Louisville. Most of you know that I was the ex-president of the AGL, which is considered to be equivalent of achieving golden standard of success in our field. I've published 4 textbooks, and I'm working on my 5th textbook currently. But what most of you don't know is that I'm actually a refugee of the Bosnian War. So 23 years ago, I lost my country. This is very emotional. My father was killed. My house was burned. The hospital where I worked was completely destroyed. My passport was worth nothing, and I literally felt like Tom Cruise character from, not Tom Cruise, but the whatever character from a movie, The Terminal. And my talk is inspired now by the current crisis, refugee crisis that is going on in Europe. And I'm sure all of you have seen these horrific scenes of the Syrian refugees being mistreated, harassed, and killed while they were trying to reach Western Europe. Syria is a country of about 23 million people, same size as Yugoslavia. And there is half of the population of Syria is uprooted. There are 7 million refugees within the Syria itself. There are 4 million refugees outside of Syria, 2 million in Turkey, 1 million in Lebanon, which is a very small country. And ironically, very small number is really reaching Western Europe. So if we look at it, there are like 50 million refugees in the world today. Each day as we speak, 32 million are being moved from their homes. 32,000 people are being displaced from their homes as we speak. So we as developed world have made tremendous achievements in science and technology, but we really have done little, very little to help these victims. So my story begins, I just want to tell you my story, how I started. And I also had a difficulty deciding what I'm going to talk about because my passion is education. So I decided I'll just combine both of these. So I was educated in Sarajevo in this brand new university hospital that was just built when I started residency. We had 12,000 deliveries a year. It was a big women's hospital. My chief of staff was, I was pretty good obstetrician, but obstetrics is generally boring, so I didn't really look for my career in obstetrics. My chief of staff was a brilliant surgeon, and he would perform diagnostic laparoscopies, and we would all lined up in a line to wait our turn to look down the laparoscope. And then we would express our admiration to the chief, how great he was. Then he would take the laparoscope, clean it, put it under his arm, and just walk away with the explanation that this is a very expensive piece of equipment and should be taken care of specially. So I figured, well, I'll just look for my luck somewhere else. And I ended up in the United States working with this guy. His name is Mac Wolf. He was a brilliant surgeon. And at that time, when I started, I spent 1 year with Mac. We did first in the world laparoscopic, actually one of the first reported case of laparoscopic treatment of interstitial pregnancy. We also did first describe the laparoscopic insufflation through the cervix and through the uterus. And we first in the world started teaching laparoscopy on cadavers. And so after that, I came back to Bosnia, trying to start my new career in laparoscopy. However, I was facing problem with the same chairman who was controlling the operative schedule and wouldn't allow anybody to operate. Plus, we didn't have the fancy equipment. But my passion was so high that I tried to overcome it. With the help of my father-in-law, who was a CEO of a big company, I raised the money, we bought equipment, we had the equipment in the hospital, so I waited for my chance. And one morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, this lady shows up with a belly full of blood. I did ultrasound, diagnosed her with an ectopic pregnancy, pulled the laparoscopic equipment, I did the surgery. My apprehension is worse, really, not because of surgery, but because of the morning report, what's going to happen next day. However, he decided to leave me alone, and I started my journey through laparoscopy. That was the first surgery performed in ex-Yugoslavia ever, laparoscopically. So, but it didn't really last for a long time, because in 1991, the war started, and I, again, was airlifted out of Sarajevo with my wife and my daughter. Emma was 5 years old. We were sitting on a plane that had, on the floor of the plane that had 700 passengers on it. It usually takes 150. And when I look back, that was the best ride of my life. Although I don't think I ever got frequent flyer miles for that trip. So we ended up again in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was able to get my old job back. I worked for 4 years, never taking 1 day of vacation. We didn't have money, and I didn't have a passport. I didn't want to go to Disneyland, I wanted to go home, but home was under siege and was unavailable. So now when people tell me you travel a lot, I say, well, heck, I'm trying to make up for all those 4 years that I never went anywhere. And during that time, it was difficult because we were getting all these bad news from home. This is the picture of our apartment house in Sarajevo, hit by a tank shell. Our apartment was on the 2nd floor. This was hit on the 1st floor. The only victim of that attack was my daughter's hamster that did not survive that from our family. And while we were working in Louisville and I was studying for my exams and everything, and this is the picture of the same house. Later, this is on the main street of Sarajevo, equivalent to 5th Avenue of New York. And this is our apartment here, the whole floor. So we were getting these terrible news, and this is the hospital where I trained was completely destroyed. At the same time, my brother was kidnapped and taken to the concentration camp, so we didn't know for 2 months what was happening with him. My father, university professor, was killed. It's going to be a week from now, 23 years ago, and I found about his death by reading this article from New York Times. 2 weeks later, because there were no connections with Sarajevo. He did smoke, but 2 packs a day, but smoking didn't kill him. It was the shrapnel of the grenade that hit him. So we had very difficult times, and I don't say, you know, through all this journey, I could have never really gone it just by myself. I had a support of my wife, Janita, and my daughter, who was my main inspiration to go on and do better things. And also, I could have never done it without help of some other people. None of these people gave me any money. None of these people gave me any material goods. They gave me a chance to prove myself. And when you look at some brilliant psychologists did this research in the 90s when they concluded that 75% of people go and sustain major traumatic event in their lives. And a great majority of them then have negative repressions like post-traumatic stress disorder. But to their great surprise, they also concluded that a great number of these people actually do better after they go to the traumatic event. And this is described as post-traumatic growth. So basically, not even knowing that those two categories exist, I had a choice between post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. I chose the second one, not even knowing that, what to expect. And another thing is that refugees really, and people who are displaced from their place, they come to the new world with great resilience. And I'm sure all of you have your phones and iPhones here. You would never be able to talk with somebody in Europe or China or in California from here, from Boston, if it was not for two immigrants. One of them was my countryman, Nikola Tesla, who figured out the wireless transmission. And I do not agree with Alan's conclusion yesterday when he says that the greatest inventor of the 20th century was Edison. It's true, Edison was a great inventor, but he was a very shrewd capitalist. And he was on the wrong path because he was looking for linear current, and Tesla invented the alternating current and make the motor and make the world go around. So Tesla's inventions are much bigger. But the irony is that he gave up all his inventions and patents because he was sued because Westinghouse was sued by Edison. So Tesla, in order to help his passion, he just gave up all the inventions. He would have been probably the richest man in the world, or his offsprings, although he didn't have any. So the second most important person is a biological father of Steve Jobs, who was a Syrian refugee in the United States. So if it wasn't for two people, we would have never enjoyed the luxuries of today's life. So refugees basically work much harder, and never underestimate the power and resilience of refugees and power of broken English. So the Economy Policy Institute concluded that in the United States, the refugees are more likely, immigrants are more likely to be employed than their counterpart Native Americans. And they also take far less, they put more into the system than they take out. But not all refugees are poor. About 64% of refugees in the United States work in traditional white-collar jobs. And they take 20% of jobs in healthcare and 30% of jobs in software development. The refugees are much more likely to start a business, and according to the statistics of 2012, 1 in 4 businesses in the United States is started by refugees. So they're much more entrepreneurial immigrants. And the immigrant-created businesses have made up over $800 billion in revenues and over $126 billion in payrolls. Being driven from all this, my passion with laparoscopy, passion with teaching, what I could conclude from all this in my talk is that this whole experience changed me completely. I became very low maintenance. My stress level is very close to zero regarding anything. There is no major event really that can upset me. And I started looking at the education also the different way. So when seeing all these phenomena that are very widely accepted in Europe and around the world, like my ex-professor who wasn't really into teaching anybody. And we can see this by when we go around the world and do all these surgeries, it's the same phenomenon. You teachers don't really try to teach you. They are mostly trying to show off and keeping their colleagues dependent upon them and upon their skills, which I recognize the phenomenon here in the United States is just opposite, and we really try to teach our students. So I can say that in my career, I've educated 23 generations of residents, 15 great fellows, numerous courses that we put in pelvic anatomy and pelvic surgery. And I can proudly say that all of them have been educated by the Bosnian refugee. Thank you very much.
No comment is needed after that reception for your wonderful talk. It just struck me, those two, yours so moving and powerful, and the wonderful artistic lecture before from Enrico. This is Europe, the glory and the disaster that is that great continent, all in two. And a question, you've suffered this as much as anyone. What would your advice be to the people in Europe at the moment, each country coping with tens of thousands of refugees coming in every day?
Well, my advice is really to look at people as people. We are all people. All these borders are artificially made. And the thing is, the refugees really, and immigrants, they bring great things to society. If you look at two most powerful or economically best well-off countries in the world are United States and Germany, and they're the only ones that take most of the refugees. So there is something in this. Refugees bring something new. Of course, there are a lot of them also, or a certain number of them that bring bad things. But in general, the society, if we are open, we're all going to do much better. So it's very sad what's happening right now in Europe, and I hope that things will stop as soon as, or the solution will be found. Yes, Ray?
Wait. All questions have to be through here because they're being recorded. Hold on one second.
Dr. Pasic, thank you for a very inspirational talk. Before I came to the United States, my assignment actually involved coverage of the Southeastern Europe, which included Bosnia, which was right after the war. And I had an opportunity to interact with surgeons as well as regular people in Bosnia, which really opened my eyes. And the one thing that I really noticed about the people of your country was the amazing ability to forgive. Really a month after everything came to cease in terms of the war. I've never seen something like that anywhere. The people of Bosnia to be congratulated for just their sentiments and their ability to forgive despite all the pain that have been induced to.
Well, I can tell you a very quick anecdote about that because I get all these letters from people that want to come to US and get educated. So one day I get this letter from Serbia. And you have to know, when this old constellation, Yugoslavia was 6 countries and they broke up, and Serbia was the major aggressor in this war. So I get this letter from the guy from Serbia, written in perfect English. He wants to come to US. So I look at it and I answer in our own language. I said, yeah, you're welcome to come. And then he says, oh, I would like to come, also bring, where can I stay? Then I figured, well, there's no other stay. Well, I said, you can stay with me. And then the next thing is, oh, I'm going to stay for a month. Yeah, that's okay. I talked to my wife. She said, that's fine. Then he goes, well, and this goes all in emails. He said, I also, my professor will come with me, so it's two of us. I said, okay, we got the room with 2 beds, like if you can share the room, yes. So they all come, and I talked to Ron Levine. I said, Ron, like, there is this guy from Serbia, 2 of them will come, and Ron said, weren't you in war with Serbs? I said, yeah, but no, these guys, these are doctors. He said, didn't Serbs kill your father? I said, yeah, but not these guys. I mean, they're different. He said, Paya, I would never, he said, you're amazing. You're like I would never take 2 Palestinians in my house.
So let me, I know that these talks this morning have just been unbelievable. We could go on, and it sounds like, I mean, to me, the whole energy of the sessions, it's just growing and growing. But we are out of time. We have a break for only 10 minutes. It's supposed to be 30 minutes, but it's 10 minutes. We start up right at 10 o'clock again. So just get a quick bathroom break, whatever you have. Now, the evaluations are outside. Please pick one up, because I don't want people leaving without filling out the evaluations. And while you're getting up, look around for any cups or anything. Take it out and clean up around you. And we'll start right at 10. And thank you very much.